Hello friends, and welcome to another figure study where I'm back behind the camera because I feel like ultimately these videos should be in service of the toy, and you can just see the toy so much better when it's front and center and you don't have to worry about me being on screen. And yeah, sorry if that bums anyone out. If you want me to go back to the other format, let me know, but really I just feel like I just did such a bad job of being able to show these things off properly in that format. With all that talk out of the way, today we're looking at another Tobot. In this case, it is Tobot V Air Hyde. This one is pretty new. I don't know exactly how new. All I know is I randomly saw a video of it pop up in my YouTube suggestions, and I had no idea this existed, but I saw that video and it's just like, I have to try and find that. So I did and found it and got it off Gmarket, and I'll get into the particulars as to why I love this thing so much. Mostly when we get, keep bumping this wing, mostly when we get to the robot mode, but this is a really interesting toy. In terms of the vehicle mode, as you can see, it's a jet, a jumbo jet, I guess. It's definitely a passenger jet, which you can hear flying overhead right now, but you can also see there are little doors and windows along the sides there, and granted, from what I understand in the Tobot cartoons, the Tobot alt modes are actually toys. They're not real-world vehicles. They're toys based on real-world vehicles, but they're not actually vehicles. So, like, this is not an enormous jet. This is a toy that turns into a big robot. The scale is definitely a little weird if this were to be a real jet, because the size of those windows would make this thing enormous, almost impossibly huge. Color scheme works really well. It's, you know, a really nice predominantly bright white, which hopefully comes across on camera, and then some blue highlights here and there, and then the occasional yellow accents, and I think that works really well because, I mean, blue and yellow go well together. So yeah, colors work out pretty well. One thing that's a little weird, I don't know if this is intentional or just the way that things worked out during production, but the blue on this section of the back is lighter than the blue on the tips of the wings. It's the same on the other side too. I don't really understand why that is. I guess it's got to be something to do with the production. From what I can tell, the plastic here and the plastic here is the same, so I don't know why they couldn't color match, but not that big a deal. And along the side you get Air Hyde along with the 89J lines for some reason. I don't really know what the purpose of that deco is, but it doesn't bother me. You also get a little bit on the wings. On this wing, you get the Air Hyde 89J lines thing there. You don't get it on this side. And then you also get the very stylized 06. Wild Chief that did a video on a little while back was 02. Regent was 04. And Air Hyde here is 06. And that is where his ToKey stores. Actually, that's where the ToKey stays, because that's just where it goes in robot mode. So there's no other place to store it. I do kind of feel like it's not really necessary to pop it off either, because, you know, these figures, you don't need the ToKey to transform them. It does not help in Air Hyde's case at all. All it does is split this little section back here, and it doesn't have that tactile enjoyment that Wild Chief does, and it doesn't accomplish anything, because the hardest part of transforming Air Hyde is popping this section off, and the ToKey does not help with that. But it stores out of the way, and unlike Regent, it's not in like an awkward place where removing it is really difficult. It's just right there. You can pop it off really easily, or if you decide you don't want to use it, you can just leave it on. Getting back to the details, get some additional details along the tail fin. There's like a little piece of something there. I don't know if that's a paint scratch or what. I've tried to scratch it off with a nail, with a fingernail. It's not working, so I don't know. And then this little bit along the back, which I guess is meant to be like an engine of sorts. I don't know what else to say about it. I actually do like this alt mode. I'm not really into commercial airliners as alt modes, but for some reason, I really enjoy this one. And I think that does a really good job of kind of masking the robot mode. Anyway, let's move him back and move the camera down so that we can start doing some size comparisons. How's that sound? Here is Air Hyde with the standard deluxe squad, and I'm still using Rotorstorm because I'm still too lazy to get Spinister off the shelf. But as you can see, he's a Tobot, so of course he's much bigger than a deluxe, and because of that wingspan, he's much, much bigger. Here he is with his series buddy, Wild Chief, and as you can see, Wild Sheep is definitely more compact and dense, but Air Hyde is bigger in virtually every aspect except maybe up, because, you know, it's longer, got the bigger wingspan, but, you know, he's more spread out. And I feel like it's roughly the same amount of vehicle here in terms of just like mass. Just Air Hyde spreads it out a little bit more. And then, of course, here he is with the duck tank. And with that out of the way, let us move on to the transformation. So first off, we're going to tuck the landing gear away, flip that in, and then these trio wheels here fold in like so. You don't need to use the ToKey. If you were to use the ToKey, you would pop it off here, put it in here, and give it a twist, and that would separate this. But as I said, it's not necessary, and it's not the hardest part of this transformation, so we're just going to leave this key plugged in here and just forget that it's there. First thing we want to do, because of the way everything transforms and the head is like up in here, I'll get to the head in a minute, but I want to open up this section here. So there's a little tab here, this first section that's sticking up a little bit here, and you can just pull that, and that will pop this open. Separate this out. You don't have to pull it out all the way, but do that. And there's a little notch back here that this little bit of plastic will rest in. So when this goes in, it kind of sits back behind that notch there. That's why you want to slide out. Then want to pop the wing section and this bit apart. And I found the best way to do that is to just kind of put leverage up here, but you kind of want to twist this way and pull this down a little bit, because if you just try to pull back, I have popped this section off completely. There's a spring-loaded catch up here in the mechanism that, you know, it's like a fail-safe almost, so if it pops off, it's not a big deal, you can pop it back on, but to avoid popping it off, you want to kind of grab the wings from this section up here, not back here, but up here, and then give this bit a twist, and that will unclip the clip back there. And then getting the other side is a little bit trickier, because if you twist it the wrong way, you could pop this side back into place, but it's not too bad. You just kind of pull up and twist, and now this is disconnected. So with this disconnected, we can swing this section down on this hinge here. And the reason we want to do this is because there's a point where this comes down and it kind of locks into place, but the act of moving this joint pops the head out of its locking point. When this is back, you can actually push the head down until it clicks. And when it's clicked in place, it's nice and solidly in there, it's not coming out. The best way to get it to pop out again is to swing this section down, and that will, at one point, push the head up enough that it pops it out of place. And then you can manually pull it up and click that in place to get it set. So with that done, there's now a double hinge back here, and you want to hinge this part up, and then this bit will clip on the underside of the wing pack section here. So kind of hinge this up. I think 3 clicks is the number, and then this folds down and will kind of clip itself into place, and that will hold pretty solidly. So to do the tail section, you can just split it apart, and in this case the ToKey is actually handy now because this is no longer clipped into the back. So if you wanted to, you could pull this out, give that a twist to pop that open, or you can just manually pull it apart. But you want to separate the legs, bring them out a click. The toes, actually, you can kind of see here that the toes sit over this bit here. So rather than move this bit immediately, you can fold the toe out. It's a Tobot, it's durable enough. It'll stand it if you move this on your own, but I like to get the toes out of the way first. Move this up, rotate it around, and this will clip into the side of the leg. Very similar to Tobot V Rocket in the sense that just a chunk of vehicle ends up clipping to the side of the leg, and only in Rocket's case, it was the front of the vehicle mode clipping into the legs. Next, we want to take care of the arms, so the arms will unplug from up here. Just pop that down and bring that down a little bit. Same on this side. Pop that down, bring that down. Rotate the bicep to get the arms in position. I'm gonna bring those down a little bit more, and then I'm just moving them forward so that I can access what I need to, because I want to pop these sections up. There are these little tabs on either side that help you kind of get the leverage you need to pop up, and that bit will pop up like that. And then you can flip the fist out and close that back up. Push that back down if you want. It's, you know, it's whatever. It's all posing. And same deal here. When I'm doing the fists, what I do is I tend to put one finger on the end of the turbine here and then push up on these tabs. And that gives me the leverage I need to get it open pretty easily. And then I use the turbine to push it out. Now we can deal with the wing kibble. So I want to rotate these turbines to the side, and they will kind of soft lock in either position. Around back, we want to fold up these bits here, which could potentially work as flaps in vehicle mode, but in their position, they'd be extremely ineffective. It's an option, but I consider it more just necessary for the transformation. But anyway, with these moved out of the way, you can then click the wings down. And then lastly, we can adjust the cockpit section kibble. So this just hinges back on this double hinge and kind of flares out and gives you a very interesting chest design. And that is Tobot V Air Hyde in robot mode. And I really like this robot mode. It's really interesting to me. I know this whole section here is kibble, but it works for me because it kind of reads more as like a cape than anything else. The kibble on the sides of the legs is there, and it can get, like, these fins can get in the way when, like, posing because of the stuff back here that it could knock against. But if you wanted to, you could bring the wings out a click or leave them out the whole distance if you wanted. You got options for that. You can kind of work around it. I do feel like it might have been a good idea to have these tail fins flip up or back or something to just kind of get them out of the way of the junk back here for articulation, but it's not like a deal breaker thing or anything like that. It's just kind of, it's there. I really like this design, in particular, like the cape and the way that the front cockpit section of the plane splits apart and makes this really interesting kind of chest design. Almost looks ornate. And I also like how these bits kind of cover up the shoulders, because the shoulders are interesting because of the way they have to work for the transformation, but it leaves you with this rather unsightly orange ratchet joint just sticking out right there. So with these bits in place, it covers up those ratchet joints a lot better, so it's just much less noticeable. So it's both interesting aesthetically and it covers things. I also actually quite like the proportions on this guy. He's a little bit lanky in places, but in a way that I think works. And I kind of like how the turbines make for some really interestingly bulky forearms. Yeah, the legs are a little skinny, but they're not stick skinny. They're fine, and like from the side, they bulk out a little bit more because they are deeper than they are wide. And colors-wise, you don't really get anything new here because so much of this is the jet, and I actually really like that. About the only new stuff you get is like the bit in the chest here, which we'll see in a minute, and the head. Everything else is just jet. I guess technically this bit back here is revealed. This is covered up by the legs in the jet mode, so I do appreciate there's a little bit of detail in there, and then you also get a little bit of extra detail on the backs of the calves, which I think are meant to be like engines or thrusters or something like that, which I can get behind. Imagine it, you know, him just kind of whooshing through the air in robot mode. And of course, the colors, it's the same as the jet mode. The gray is a little bit more prominent that you see in the thighs here, and then you also get the black and in some cases orange for the joints in a few places. But really, it's mostly just the same white and blue and yellow from the jet mode, and I'm fine with that. Moving in closer to look at the head and chest, there you can see the revealed detail in the chest there, and I don't know that it's absolutely necessary, but I do think it adds just a little bit. I feel like that would be kind of plain if it was just white in there, so it kind of works, and of course the colors complement what's going on in the flared out bits around the chest. And the head kind of looks like, almost like a tiny stylized jet all on its own, which is kind of cute. He's got the little turbines next to his face, a nice cool little visor, and I don't know, I dig the head sculpt. Kind of looks like a shuttlecraft or something. Now, about that head, you may notice that the paint up here looks fine. If you've seen other videos on this guy, you may have noticed that a lot of people have had issues with paint scratching up there. That is because I modded my Air Hyde so that I could transform him and not have to worry about his head getting scratched up. Because what was happening, from what I've seen in the videos, is there are these, I'm going to try to show it here. There are these bits on the inside of this section here. You can kind of see the remnants of them, these little like ridges on the inside. Those ridges stick out much, much further. For example, when I took this guy apart to do the mod, this is what these pieces originally looked like. And those ridges were what were causing the paint scratching up at the top there. There's just not enough room. I think even if you push the head down until it clicks, it just scratches the paint off like right around here on either side, and you get these like blue lines. So I took it apart, and taking it apart is a simple matter of just removing this screw and this whole white piece just slides off. That's all you got to do. You just take out those two screws, slide the white piece off, and the reason I did that is because it gave me the angles that I needed to carve out, or rather remove, those ridges. And I shaved it down as best I could because I didn't want to risk the paint on this guy. And with those ridges out of the way, now when his head goes down to his chest cavity for transformation, and this swings in, you can see that it actually fits just right in there. Granted, the head is not clicked down into place right now, so it wouldn't fit normally anyway. But, okay. With him temporarily transformed partially back into his jet mode with the head clicked down into place very solidly, now you can see when we transform this in, there's just enough clearance for the head to fit in there. And with those ridges in place, it was still bound to scrape against this thing. By carving out those ridges, I basically removed the risk, so I don't have to worry about his head getting scratched up, and I very much prefer that. And now I can transform him back and forth, and I do not have to worry at all about the paint. Now, in terms of articulation, he's not as amazing as Wild Chief, but he is really good. So you've got the ball-jointed head that can look up and down to a degree and can tilt side to side and can look left and right. These bits can flex out of the way if you need them to. This bit, it does lock in place, so when it's positioned right, you don't have to worry about it flopping, but you can unpeg it to move it for some reason. Like, I guess if you want to make it go back a little bit and make it look like a little bit more dynamic. The arms, because of the way that they're on here, they have the same range of motion mostly, but it's a little bit weird just because of the positioning, and also because of the fact that they're attached back here rather than onto the torso. This is as far back as the arms can go. They cannot go back any further unless you disconnect this and kind of use that as an approximation. But again, it doesn't really bother me. But they can go in and out, and because of the fact that they're attached back here rather than the torso, if you move this out of the way, they can go kind of ridiculously up. They can, of course, go forward, and the forward motion is also impeded by this bit, but again, you can move it out of the way to get a little bit more range on it, but it does affect how it ends up looking on the robot mode. But it's there, and you can go all the way up if you want to do that. As we saw for the transformation, there is a bicep swivel, and it actually goes all the way around, unlike Regent's weirdly blocked off thigh swivels that I don't understand. You also get a double jointed elbow, but it only goes as far as it goes for the transformation, so that is as deep as the bend gets. Better than 90 degrees, not as good as Wild Chief, but that is as far as it goes because that is the precise angle it needs to be at for the transformation. You don't get any movement. Well, I guess you get a tiny bit of wiggle up and down in the wrists, but they don't rotate. And despite the fact that there is a pin going through the section here, the fingers do not open, which I'm generally fine with because, you know, it's a Tobot, so whatever. As I showed, you can reposition the wings if you want. He actually has a waist swivel. This is really interesting to me because that's not part of the transformation. generally speaking, in my experience, Tobots tend to not have waist swivels unless it's for the sake of the transformation. It's ratcheted, so it moves in like increments of 45 degrees, which is a little bit but the ratchet's a little bit forgiving, so you can kind of stop it between the ratchets. So like you can see, if you move it enough, it kind of snaps back into place, but you can kind of work with that. If you do want to be careful of these though, I'm not careful, it's not like you're going to break anything, but you could scratch paint maybe. But like when you rotate this, it can get caught up on the wing section here. Like it can get kind of under the wing, the turbine, and it's just something to be aware of. As for the hips, I'm actually going to get the wing up and out of the way just to show this a little bit better. But the hips can go back about that far before it crashes into this, but then if you move this out of the way, it can go back way far. The hips can also go forward to about here, and then they are impeded by the ToKey. But you can just remove the ToKey and the hips will go a lot further forward. Or another option is with the ToKey in place, if you bring the hips out further, you can bring them up and they just kind of go around the ToKey. And then, as you might remember from earlier, there is also thigh swivel, and the thigh swivel goes all the way around. This bit up here can crash into the pelvis depending on how in the hip is. So like this is not going to turn that way, but it will turn this way. And if you bring it out, then it'll rotate in better because that has the clearance. But the range is there. He also has double jointed knees, and the knees aren't part of the transformation either. I'll take the ToKey off for now so I don't have to worry about it, but with the leg all the way forward, you can bend the knee pretty significantly. Like that's a pretty decent knee bend. And when you're bringing the knee back, you want to be mindful of this bit here because it does stick out. If you bring this joint up first and then try to move this one, it'll bang into this. So you kind of want to straighten out the lower joint first, then the top joint. And he also technically has a toe that you can move, and it is on a soft ratchet, so it kind of sits in place in a few different spots. So Air Hyde is pretty darn decently posable, just for a toy in general, but like especially for a Tobot. He's not quite Wild Chief levels of awesome, but he's really up there. And I'm kind of shocked by that, but I also kind of love it because I really thought this design was cool, and so I think this really interesting design coupled with actually surprisingly solid posability is just a great combination. And this guy just looks so incredibly cool. I really like the look of this robot, and as I said, the extra range of motion in most of these joints is just a bonus. And bringing in the standard deluxe squad, you can see that, it's Tobot, so he's quite large. Not as big as classic Tobots, as I've said with a lot of these more recent Tobot figure videos, but still pretty sizable. And here he is with Wild Chief, who is still the reigning champion of Tobot posability in my mind, though there really are not that many differences between the two of them. Like, Wild Chief has slightly better range in some regards, but he doesn't have a waist swivel. Air Hyde has a waist swivel, doesn't have an ab crunch. Yeah, like these two together, the posability between them is fantastic. The designs are so cool. I really like both of these toys. They are so much fun. And here he is with the duck tank. And that will do it for Tobot V06 Air Hyde. As I said, I really like this guy. He's really cool. His design is right up my alley, and just little elements that I really like about this guy. And yeah, there are some issues and limitations, but like, it's just such a cool design, and the transformation's interesting, and I really like how the front of the jet splits across to kind of spread out and cover his shoulders, and all the stuff I've said already. I just really like it. I'm having a difficult time deciding if I like him or Wild Chief more. Ultimately, I feel like Wild Chief does the articulation better, but Air Hyde, I feel like his aesthetic just hits me so much better. But anyway, I have rambled for long enough. Please feel free to let me know what you all think of Air Hyde here, or Tobots in general. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I do always enjoy hearing from you all. I am still doing the Patreon thing, so if you're so inclined, You can sign up for the $1 tier, which just basically supports the channel and gets you early access to videos. Other than that, just want to say thank you all for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.